Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Business Brunch. This is a show that offers continual professional development over lunch in bite-sized chunks. And we are delighted today to be joined by Rob Willis, who will introduce properly in just a minute. But he's over in Berlin. The rest of us are in the UK. But if you're just joining us now, do say hello in the comments. Let us know where you are joining us from. Today's topic is all about powerful presentations. Rob is a speaker, a coach, and a facilitator, and has been running his own business three and a half years now.
About that, yeah.
3.5 years now, and so he's going to help us with all things presentation. What goes wrong, what we can do about it, the power of doing this well, the impact it can have on us, and probably our career as well if we get this right. So we are going live over a multitude of channels. So do not worry if you can't see messages coming up in your feed that are being seen in other people's feeds. It's just because you're on a different channel to other people. I will just briefly introduce myself, ask Melinda and Vanessa to do the same, and then we'll hand over to Rob. And Rob has had an interesting past before he turned into a power presenter. And I'm going to ask you about that as well. You weren't necessarily prepared for that, but we're going to ask because it's interesting.
Okay.
But my name's Sarah Farmer. I'm an executive coach, and I work with leaders and leadership teams around the globe, helping them develop the mindset and the skills to achieve incredible results. I'll just hand over to Melinda to say hi, who you are as well.
Hello, my name is Melinda Ward. I am the Director of Consulting Solutions and Managed Services for Helm 360, and I'm really happy to have you on the show, Rob. And Vanessa, how about yourself?
Okay, hello everyone, Vanessa Ashworth. I'm a marketer and I've just started a new role. I'm in my second week with eServe, so that's all good. That's me. Shall we say hello to Rob first, and then we'll go to the comments?
Yeah, let's say so. Rob, thank you for joining us today. I have been following Rob on LinkedIn, and I have to say, if you're not connected to Rob on LinkedIn, you must, because he does the most brilliant videos which have me howling a lot of the time. And particularly like the one where you had the little metal foil hat on, which did make me laugh. But Rob, just explain who you are, where you are in the world, and what you do, just so people know what to expect from you today.
Yeah, my name's Rob Willis. I'm from the UK originally, hence the voice and the accent. Based in Berlin, though, and as you said, I work teaching people really about communication in tech to solve, I think, everyone's biggest problem, which you've got too many meetings. So I teach them to communicate properly so they can actually get stuff done. And this means, helping people think more strategically about how they use communication, how they can deliver more powerful presentations that get buy-in, de-escalating conflict, running more focused meetings, essentially so everyone can work more efficiently, faster, and not be weighed down by meetings and processes and stuff like that. But as you said, I've got a non-traditional career path towards this.
You have. So you were a Berlin tour guide for several years, and you were also a music producer as well. So just before we say hello to everybody, why? What led you to doing what you're doing now?
So I would say probably my focus on communication began with the job as a tour guide and what I was doing at the time, which were called free tours. Have you ever heard of free tours? Yeah. So the principle is this, or the structure is this. You can go on a tour and it doesn't cost anything, but at the end you can give a tip if you like tips, and then you live off the tips. But what you don't know about the guide is that they pay a marketing fee to a company, which is fair enough. Disclaimer, I think it's completely fair. So there is the capacity that you could lose money from a group. You've got a group of 30 people, it costs you however much to take the group, and you keep the difference between the marketing fee and what they give you. And I was terrible when I started. I was really, really bad, because I focused on delivering lots of facts. I figured, well, this is complicated, this is nuanced. I also maybe selfishly wanted to show I was clever. So I just told people as much as possible throughout that time. And it just didn't work. People weren't engaged. I didn't make any money. And I tried everything to make it work. I tried more facts. I tried picture books. I felt, like people use slides to think, oh, get that right, then it'll work better. I'm ashamed to say, I tried subliminal messaging. So I
Bit of
bought
NLP going on then.
exactly that kind of I said random words to be chucked out there, and I think people just thought I was quite strange. But in the end,
Spend money, give me
yeah,
cash, that kind of thing. Yeah.
like holding something up with a like I don't know, it just didn't work until I really focused on stories. So not only telling stories, but also just using the story structure as a framework to deliver information, which is the most intuitive way to get information. And I realized after, because I was doing this 2 or 3 times a day, every day, Monday to Saturday for years. I gave 3,000 tours.
Wow.
And I was able to come up with frameworks that I then taught to people in organizations. And because Berlin is the tech center of not maybe not all of Europe, but certainly a big tech hub in Europe, that's where my focus began about trying to solve their problems. Like, how can I use these skills to help them?
So that makes complete sense. I did wonder what the answer to that question was going to be, but that makes complete sense. Thank you. And what an interesting way to get to the point that you are at now, and great experience and great learnings with that. Should we pop over to the comments?
Let's say hello. So Claire is here, Claire Martin. She says, hello, everyone. She is joining us from the wet Welsh borders. Then we've got Sarah. Sarah is joining from Swindon, and she's interested in your zebra artwork.
I'll drop you a note on that. Clarendon Arts, that was from.
Clarendon Arts. Amechi says, hello, greetings from Wellingborough. He likes my new location. It's not new. I'm just at a different angle. Normally I sit that way, but now I'm sitting this way. So I'm just changing it up a bit. Yeah. Martin Bradley says hello to me, not to you, just to me. Hi, Martin.
Well, Martin, I mean, hi from all of us as well. I mean, we don't feel bad about this at all.
And then Sue is here from London, England, but is there more than one London? Probably.
Well, there's one in Canada outside Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Christopher Rose says hello, just popping on during lunch.
Hey, Chris, and just if you haven't seen Chris's post from yesterday, do go and have a look. Really good article.
It was, yes. And Paul Claro says, great so far. Good. Danny says, finally here. You're late. We were wondering where you were. But afternoon all. And Paul is asking, what's Rob's LinkedIn profile? We'll put that in the messages at the end. Yeah, we'll find you there. And Ayumi is here. She says hello from Dronfield. And then finally at the minute, Andrew David Rice is here in sunny France. How nice. How nice. Welcome all.
Welcome all indeed. Right, so time is marching on. We have about 20 minutes to get into the crux of this, Rob. So I'm going to start with asking you, what goes wrong? I mean, you've described some of your own experiences, which probably answer that question, but just in a nutshell, what goes wrong with the presentations that you see?
There's 3 kind of overarching points, and I can dive a little bit deeper into each of them if you want. And I think first is people don't know why they're presenting. Like, what's the purpose of it? They don't consider the issue from the topic of their audience and think about what everyone else is thinking about. And they don't think about the format of their presentation. And when I mean that, I mean not necessarily the presentation itself, but everything going on around it. Yeah. So maybe start with not knowing why they present. I think most people generally present because they were asked to by someone.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, well, I've just got to go and deliver all of this information. So really, it's like a checklist in their mind of information to get through. And that is not the way to get information across. Actually, the last job I did, working with a team to develop their presentation, it was a group of 3. They had 10 minutes to try and promote their team within the whole organization at a stand-up. Great opportunity for them. And they went one after the other, and each person had a list of loads of stuff which they just went through. And none of it really had any impact. None of it really tied into each other. And when you speak like that, first of all, no one remembers it. But also nothing will happen at the end of it. The most will be someone will say, oh, cool, interesting, and move on to the next thing after it. But nothing's ever really changed throughout it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people end up also, if they're not used to public speaking and they're in that kind of a situation, one of the first things they want to do is kind of establish like that they know stuff. And so without thinking about the audience and who they're presenting to, it's less about the audience and more about themselves, just kind of trying to say, I'm here for a reason. I'm here because I do this, 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 and I have this background and I know these things, which isn't necessarily the great launch pad that they would hope is.
No.
I mean, that's not, if you ask the audience, why are you listening to this person? It's not like, oh, I really want to know that they know their stuff. Like, you're kind of hoping they know their stuff.
And if someone's starting out with their CV, basically, that's not really going to win interest, is it?
Yeah, I guess that ties into, like, even when you're in an interview, it's not just to go through a list of your accomplishments. It is it's to lead, isn't it? Speaking is a form of leadership. People are in one place, you want to bring them somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you need to work out what is required to get them from that one place to another, rather than just listing off facts.
So you talk about we're not seeing it from the audience's point of view, which is a classic one. I used to teach presentation skills in a previous life, and one of the biggest things is when people realised it wasn't about them anymore; it was about the audience, and a lot of that comes down to fear of presentations as well, isn't it? Fear of looking stupid, not getting it right. So how do we help them understand it from the audience's point of view? And your final one was about format, I think you said.
Yes. Okay. So the audience's point of view. Let's start with that. So really, if we want to get people from one place to another, we need to understand where they are at that moment. Because if people don't feel heard, they're not going to listen to you. And you need to clearly articulate that you've understood their problem. So to give an example, a lady I was working with, she runs a graduate scheme in a big company, and she needed to have more resources to bring more graduates into the company. And the person who could deliver that was the CTO. And in her mind, the problem was, we've not got enough money to bring graduates in. But when we worked together and we thought, okay, what is the CTO's problem? And is that problem that you've defined not just the opposite of your solution? We then worked out, actually, he doesn't really care too much about graduates. He cares about senior engineers in the company. So then we had to completely reframe what we were talking about in terms of long term, this is going to deliver the kind of results that you need for your job, like i.e. senior engineers. And we had to build the whole presentation around that, because we get so locked either through fear or just through curse of knowledge, just in our own minds and how we see a problem, that we forget to phrase it as another person might see it, so they don't engage.
So the first thing then is to make sure that you've really understood it from their point of view, what matters to them, and present it in a way that they can hear it. And I would imagine communication styles and skills here are important too, because it's not just the information, but I mean, we won't go into that today because that's a whole other topic.
Sure.
But so what about the format then? Is that's got to be how people want to hear things?
It's also how, let me give you an example. It's if you tell someone, okay, you've got a meeting with your lead, 30 minutes to present. They think, oh, right, 30-minute meeting. That means it's a 30 minutes presentation, right? And they think that, okay, well, stuff is done by you talking, giving a heroic presentation, and at the end, everyone claps and they say yes. And then you go about your life.
And you go, yes, I was amazing.
Exactly. Everyone's cheering. And
in our dreams.
That's not how any decision has been made. And it shouldn't be made. And it's made after, the decisions are made after a discussion. So the questions and the discussion is as much of the presentation as the presentation is. So you need to create a persuasive message which kickstarts that discussion. And then about 3 times the amount of time will be devoted to actually talking. So really what I mean is consider how your presentation is being viewed by them. How much time have they got realistically? What else needs to happen? And in a regular meeting, it's going to be presentation, then talk, or maybe if we're in sales, it'll be conversation, then short presentation to get them to the next call. If you're giving a TED talk, if you're giving an all hands, they all have their own formats that you need to be aware of. And you can't just apply one format to another one.
Really, really good point. I think we do get that. And again, a lot of that is to do with, oh my gosh, I've got to present something. I'll do it the best way that I know how, but we're not thinking about it from the other point of view, the other's point of view.
The common thing
also,
is, you know, as you said, you think I've got X amount of time, so X amount of time to present, X amount of time for question and answers. But as you very rightly said, it's more about what do you want the outcome to be.
Yeah.
So it's not that you want questions and answers. You actually want to go somewhere with it. You want a decision or you want action. So it's understanding what that action is and feeding it, and not expecting, as you say, you present, everyone claps, and job done.
Yeah, so that feeds into kind of two things. It's like, firstly, the audience needs to know why they're there. Because if they're watching some presentation, they don't really know why they're there. They think it's just FYI. And then at the end, you say, oh, and now I need you to make a decision on this. They're going to be like, wait, I didn't listen well enough, or I missed some stuff. So it's like setting up that expectation early is important. But I think also sometimes people who are making presentations don't want to open up or like show their cards too early. So they don't want to let people know that they're going to be asking for a commitment because they're afraid that they'll lose the audience early. And also they might not want to open it up for questions because that might expose their own lack of knowledge. So it's a confidence issue sometimes that people are like, oh, well, if I give my speech, I know what I'm saying and I can't be caught out, you know? So it's that fear.
Is it confidence, or is it a misunderstanding of what questions are and for?
Probably
maybe both. Maybe both.
I mean, maybe one leads to the other. Because if you as we're educated in Western schools and university, what we're educated on is basically how much information do you have and how accurate is it? And then you ask questions to test, do they know everything? I think we feel like that in work, which is just totally not, like, information does not equal impact. If you were to change it and think, actually, the questions are not hard, they're a necessary part of the decision-making process. And if I'm talking to an executive, their job is to ask me questions, to challenge my thinking on this. And just because they're asking me questions doesn't mean that it's bad. It means that they're doing their job and I'm doing my job as well. And I think if we thought more in those terms, then people might be more open to receiving questions and less worried about whether they looked confident or not in answering them.
I think you're right.
I think also, if you understand your audience, you can anticipate the questions and be more prepared. So it's really doing that early legwork.
I mean, presenting communication is more than just delivering the information, isn't it? It's everything that happens before and right up to the presentation and afterwards too, isn't it?
It is completely. So if you have any questions for Rob, just before we go into the next bit, your top 3 tips, which we might well have covered, we'll just check in and see if you've got any comments. But if you've got any questions for Rob on presentation skills, communication, effectiveness, then please do ask them. He's here. He will do his best to answer them for you.
So just going quickly through the comments, then Andrew says people won't remember what you said a week from now, and some not even 5 minutes from now, but they will remember how you made them feel. And then Paul said quite rightly, that's the Maya Angelou quote, the famous quote from Maya. Clive asks, Rob, do you have any experience of presenting a pitch bid to get funding for development capital? And what's your tips for such bids?
Yeah, I was working with a biotech on their startup, actually their pre-seed and their seed round. And it's pretty much exactly the same thing. You need to have a clear idea of what you want to achieve out of that meeting. Be that getting people to put their name on the book with a loose promise of what they're going to be presenting. Of course, there's other tactics as well that you need to employ in it, which is, well outside the topic for today's. But it's about having a clear idea of what you can achieve in that meeting and going after it reasonably directly and building in time for that conversation as well. Not filling up a half-hour meeting with a half-hour presentation, because you're not going to get half-hour anyway because they're going to be late, let's be honest.
Thank you for that question, and I'm sure you can pick that up with Rob.
For sure, I'd love to talk about it more.
Yeah. Danny says he was taught that we should always be thinking to thank the audience for donating their time, which means you need to show them how the presentation will add value and why they should invest their time in it.
Yeah.
It's a fair enough point. But I'm not a big fan of people who say thank you at the end of presentations, because I think, like, hey, you're the one who should have delivered value by that point. But
Yeah.
I like the idea that the best thanks you can give for attention is a great presentation. However, if it's not a good one, they won't pay attention anyway. So
it's an interesting one, because the course that I was trained in to deliver for presentation skills, they always said say thank you 3 times at the end of it. Thank you for this and thank you for that. But actually, when you think about self-confidence, which is obviously, you know, my bag and imposter syndrome and everything else, that would be a little bit too humble for me, because you're right, you should be adding the value throughout. So it's thank you for your contribution, thank you for joining in, not thank you for letting me talk to you.
Yeah, that's a much better. I like the thank you for your questions and stuff.
Yeah, maybe it was that. It was a long time ago since I was trained, so probably.
So Danny says, for clarity, I'm not saying that we physically
thank
you. I'm saying that we should consider the audience.
Yeah.
Or even take audience.
100%.
Okay, thanks, Danny. So top 3 tips. I mean, you've covered quite a few already. Have you got any other top 3 tips you're happy to give away to get people?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Give away everything.
Many, aren't there?
But yeah, the fundamental first thing you need to do is have a clear objective for your presentation. Like, just without that, everything else will be, you won't know what to focus on. You'll waste time on dead ends and so on. Clear call to action. I want people to think or this way or do this thing after my presentation. And in business, it's mostly going to be do this thing at the end of the presentation, for sure. Again, kind of touched on this, but having a clear structure based around one key message. Now, the message, let's start with that. This message should be a crystallization of everything that you want to say in the presentation in one sentence of no more than 10 to 15 words. And the key with a sentence like this is that you can say it, and on its own, someone would kind of know what your point was, what you were thinking, your thesis, if you want to put it that way. And we had a quote earlier about what's memorable is what's emotional. That's true. People remember emotions, but they also remember repetition. So if you can have a sentence like that, you can repeat it throughout. So Simon Sinek, people don't remember what they do. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, we're going to reinvent the phone. So it's like 17 times in 4 minutes, something crazy like that. So a key message which will crystallize what you want to say and is understandable. Like, don't go cute with this. Don't say the future is tomorrow and like, oh, what? Yeah. Have something which is very much a crystallization of the whole point of your message, and then build a structure around it. Story structure is the simplest because we all know it, beginning, middle, end. Where are people at the beginning? What's going to change? And how is it going to turn out at the very end?
Ooh. And asking for a friend who does a lot of webinars, might be me. Because talking about clear call to action, with a webinar, we are there to impart information and help people. So the call to action isn't necessarily to do business or to buy something. It's to take the next step. But it doesn't matter what it is, does it? It's just be clear what you're going to be sharing, what's going to happen, opportunities for them afterwards, right at the beginning, so everyone's clear about what's going to happen.
See, I kind of disagree. I think there should be one clear next step.
Yeah.
One binary, yes, they did it, no, they didn't do it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's marketers do it. They use webinars to do it as well. And people can be come a bit strongly with it, I think, sometimes. If you've enjoyed this, buy my 15-part course at a price of God knows how much. Like, that can be a little bit tacky. And also can be too much because maybe someone isn't ready to start working with you in that particular moment. But you have to think, what's the logical next step?
Yeah.
What's the smallest thing that they could do which would still be meaningful?
Lead magnets.
Lead magnets, we already emailed about that. They're a great example of it because they're your chance to give someone a quick win.
Yeah.
A preview of how good it would be to work with you. And it needs to actually do that and fulfill that, because then that gives you more authority with everything that you've said.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm so absorbed in this, I didn't count the number of tips. They're all brilliant. Did we do 3? Are there any more? I don't know.
Well,
Let's
we've got
not
a question though. That Vanessa
Yeah,
said, so.
just are you familiar with Ted Sorensen's 4 words and 5 lines model? I'm going to lift my hand up and say I'm not.
No
I
idea.
am not either.
Nope.
I'd like to know
Okay.
more, though.
Yeah, tell us about it in the comments. I like we've said about thanking people, and I think a waste of a slide is to write thank you at the end.
Okay.
And we've talked about this before. It's your value proposition, isn't it? Which is your key message. The opening slide when you go into a room should be your key message, so that when everyone's getting coffee, they know what you're there to talk about. And that should be your final slide as well when you're discussing it at the end, so they've got no doubt in their minds what ought to happen next. So I'm
just going to have to redo a presentation I've just done. Darn! I spent 4 hours doing it yesterday, and I don't like it now because it's almost. And I should know better. I've trained this, but I think I've got a little bit lost in my own little. Oh, what do I need to say? So this is absolutely brilliant. Sorry, Amechi's got.
Amechi's saying, do anticipate questions and hold space for questions. It takes the pressure off believing you need to have an answer ready for everything. Also, it's okay to give yourself permission to say you don't know. Absolutely. Brilliant. And we'll come back to them. I completely agree.
Yeah. We've spoken about confidence, haven't we? And I think some of it comes from the belief that we should need to know everything in order to present, which is not our job.
No.
Our job is to have the answer to one question, to solve one problem, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's why you have your job and the person you're talking to has their job. Like, just because let's say you're talking to a senior leadership, they've got a lot more breadth of the company. They know a lot more about other parts of it, but they don't have the depth that you do. So it doesn't matter that you don't know about all these different things. You come to them with your expertise, you answer one question. And if they ask you about stuff beyond that, you could know, but if you don't, that is not your job to know in that moment.
And it's having the self-confidence, isn't it, to understand that you don't need to have the breadth, it's the depth of your particular area of expertise. Okay, we have literally just got 2.5 minutes left. What would you say the advantages are of getting better at presentation skills and communicating your message more clearly and more impactfully?
For starters, it's unavoidable. At some point, someone's going to ask you to deliver a presentation. If you want to go beyond the level of an organization that an AI could do your job very easily, you need to present at some point. But that's good, because a presentation is the fastest way to get a lot done. You can talk to either a lot of people and get a buy-in from all of them, or you can speak to one person who has a lot of power, and you have the potential with a presentation to move them from one place to the other, to change the way they see something and hopefully achieve something more. I think that is the big value for presenting, is you can achieve a lot in a relatively short amount of time with it, more than anything else.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sorry, Melinda.
I was just going to say, and that's why, like, the whole idea of knowing your audience and serving them as opposed to serving yourself is so key, because otherwise you're losing this opportunity, aren't you?
Yeah. And usually there's clarifying questions. You either have to book another meeting if you're not clear, and that meeting might not happen, and then your whole hard work for your project is just lost. So it makes sense to not only learn how to think and deliver great work, but also know how to present and communicate that effectively as well.
Brilliant. We are just about to run out of time, and you've covered everything perfectly. It's almost like you planned it this way. And I would imagine, as someone who does presentation skills or communication for a living, you probably did have a plan. And we just want to say massive thank you for sharing all of this. And if you want to get hold of Rob, we will pop your LinkedIn profile into the comments after this, so people can get hold of you and watch your fabulous videos when they come up. Now, no pressure. And if you're watching this on replay, then thank you for joining us. Please let people know if you've liked this. Tell us if you would like any other topics for us to cover. We're always keen to hear from people about what you want to do. This is your half an hour to educate, to inspire, and share knowledge with you. So tell us what you want and we will make sure it happens. Rob, massive thank you. And Melinda, Vanessa, as ever, a joy. We'll see you all next week. I think something's coming up for job seekers next week. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's in my head. So, Rob, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.